My name is Brent Baum, and I am not only your favorite contrarian, I'm the only contrarian. And I'm not here to discuss what you want to hear, but what you need to hear. And that's right, I will be discussing today Eagles-Redskins matchup. Kickoff is at 1 p.m. Eagles are home this time. The Redskins are sitting at 6-5-1. The Eagles are sitting at 5-7. And all of a sudden, we're looking at this Eagles team, right? They had an abysmal game against the Bengals, a team that everybody thought they were going to win. I figured they were going to lose that game. I told people before the game they were going to lose that game because the Eagles right now are just not a good team. They don't know how to finish drives. They don't know how to get after the quarterback. They don't know how to cover people. They're not an aggressive team. And they pass the ball way too many times. Carson Wentz had over 60 pass attempts. I can understand if this was a Drew Brees or Aaron Rodgers or somebody who actually had weapons around him. But this receiving core is rather draconian. So when you have such a draconian receiving core, you don't throw the ball 60 times. It just doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way, but they still manage to do that. And when you're looking at this matchup against the Redskins, I mean, they're going to have their hands full. Kirk Cousins has dominated the Eagles. He is 3-1, 10 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions, over 1,000 yards during that 4-game span. So the Eagles struggle against Kirk Cousins. And he has an arsenal of weapons. Deshaun Jackson, Jamison Crowder, Jordan Reed, Pierre Garçon, and then Chris Thompson obviously is good in the backfield. So it's going to be a real test for this Eagles secondary because we understand whenever Deshaun Jackson comes back to Philly, he always brings it because Deshaun Jackson, we all know, he never wanted to leave. And quite frankly, Deshaun Jackson was the last player on this team I was actually a big fan of. And now he's gone. He's been gone. And now we're hearing talks of possible reunion. And that would be great if we had a reunion. We are able to rekindle that relationship with Deshaun Jackson. No more Chip Kelly. No more of that. So maybe we can bring Deshaun back. So I think the Eagles secondary, they're going to have to be very disciplined. And the only way that they're going to be able to really have success against this secondary, against this receiving core, is if they get after the quarterback. They got to get after the quarterback. I'm looking at Fletcher Cox. Fletcher Cox, he was not even on the stat sheet last game. He had no tackles, no sacks. They only got after Andy Dalton twice. Twice. That's unacceptable. But this guy is getting the highest paid. He had the highest paid contract, former highest paid contract, for a non-offensive player, a non-quarterback, yet he's just not producing. He's not producing. And Kirk Cousins obviously struggles when he sees that pocket collapse. He makes errant throws. It makes a great opportunity for the secondary to get some takeaways. And surprisingly, this Eagles team is pretty good at takeaways. They have 18 takeaways this year, which ranks them 10th. So they are getting it done in that department. But at the same time, the turnovers are not timely enough. They're not finishing it up. They're not getting it done. And on top of that, if Kirk Cousins gets that receiving game going, he gets the passing game going, then you have to deal with fat Rob Kelly. And Rob Kelly, he's a load. He's a one-cut north and south runner. He attacks that hole. And we remember last time the Eagles faced against the Redskins, it was at Washington, and they had over 200 rushing yards. 200 rushing yards. They ran through the teeth of that defense. Ran straight through the teeth of that defense. And we can't afford to have that happen. The strength of this Eagles defense is that front seven. Their ability to attack that line of scrimmage and really stop the run. Because this Eagles defense is a solid defense. Even though they didn't look great against Cincinnati, overall, they're a pretty decent defense. They're 13th overall in total defense. So they're doing okay. But the last couple of games, the Bengals, they went against an Andy Dalton team that was AJ Greenless. They didn't have to worry about AJ Green. They didn't have to worry about Giovanni Bernard. Yet they still managed to get torched. They got torched. I can't even tell you how many times they targeted Leotis McKelvin. McKelvin continues to get targeted, or Jalen Mills continues to get targeted. We don't have that shutdown number one corner, that cornerback who can be on an island by himself. We don't have that. It is absolute paradise. The Islands are paradise when they look at the film of the Eagles secondary. It just is. And unfortunately, Jim Schwartz has this tendency. He doesn't do a lot of blitzing, as we know. Doesn't like to blitz a whole lot, so a lot of the sacks had to be coverage sacks. And I think that this Eagles team, in order for them to have success against this team, they got to get over after Kirk Cousins. They absolutely have to blitz a lot more. I want to see a lot more blitzing after him. But on the other side of it, I'm looking at Carson Wentz. One of the keys of Carson Wentz is he really needs to play within himself on the offensive end. He can't just start forcing all these different throws and expecting things to happen, especially with this receiving core. Because you've seen the last game, his mechanics were completely off, and different people want to throw out there, oh, well, Doug Peterson is saying his mechanics are off. Carson Wentz is saying that his mechanics aren't off. But clearly he was starting off his back foot. He was making errant throws. He wasn't going through his progressions. He was locking in on one receiver, and he was throwing there. And they knew that. That's why Vontaze Burfict had 2 interceptions against him. So the thing with Carson Wentz is he has to play within himself. They have to do a lot more intermediate routes, a lot more intermediate throws. I think that Turner looked very good. He's actually a lot better of a route runner than I thought. He doesn't have a lot of speed, but he did have a pretty good game. He had 7 catches for, I think, 74 yards. So I expect Paul Turner to be a lot more involved in this offense. And not only that, Jordan Matthews, maybe they need to start putting him back in the slot a little bit more. Give him an advantage against those nickel cornerbacks, those smaller cornerbacks, and get a little bit more matchups against linebackers. Because when I look at this Eagles receiving core, we're relying heavily on the deep pass now, yet we don't have those deep threat guys on a consistent basis. Yes, Triggs has a lot of speed, but I don't think that Carson Wentz's deep ball is good enough yet right now. He started off the season, his deep ball was impeccable because he had good footwork, his mechanics were there, he was going through his progressions. But when you see a lack of footwork, that affects deep passing accuracy. So more than anything, I think Carson Wentz has to get into a rhythm. Do those little dink passes. Do this West Coast offense. Get Sproles involved in the passing game. Get Barner involved in the passing game. And get Wendell Smallwood involved more. I know people are saying that Ryan Matthews might be back, but right now the future of this team's running game is Wendell Smallwood. Give Wendell Smallwood the ball. He only had 8 carries last game. 8 carries for, I think it was like 33 yards. Actually, 8 carries, 19 yards last game. You can't afford to run the ball 8 times for your lead running back. This is not going to get anything done. Teams' defenses are just locking up. They're just playing the pass now. When they look at film, they see Carson Wentz throwing 60 passes in a game. That's all they're going to play. So you saw that he absolutely got punished. He got punished. The Bengals' defense knocked him over well over 10 times. He only got sacked once, but still, that did not tell the whole story. So more than anything, they have to. When I'm looking at the offense, they have to protect Carson Wentz. They have to get the run game started early on, and then they can open up the pass. Because another weapon who I'm looking at right now, 2 weapons right now. I'm looking at Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz had a pretty solid game. He had 9 catches last game for 79 yards. And also, I want Dorial Green Beckham to get involved more. I know people are looking at Dorial Green Beckham. He's not really doing much. Last game, he only had 4 catches, 29 yards. But this guy is just a physical specimen. 6'5", runs a 4.40, big target, big leaper, great large catching radius. This guy I think he can be a star. The problem with him is he's not a great route runner. And in college, he's got away with his natural athletic ability. But in the NFL, of course, you got to be a great route runner. You have to be able to get off those routes. You can't rely on your physical tools because those defensive backs, they are pressing and jamming the receivers at the line of scrimmage, and they're forcing them to make a route. And there's only so much time. That time is ticking for the quarterback to get rid of the ball. And if you're not getting separation, it's not going to happen. You look at Nelson Aguilar. That's the reason why he's been struggling. He doesn't get separation. Everybody's saying it's mental, it's mental, it's mental. But I'm telling you right now, it is not mental. It is not mental from Nelson Aguilar. He's just not getting separation. That's the bottom line. He has to get separation. That's how he's going to get things done. I mean, I look at Nelson Aguilar. He's got some tools, but I hate to say it, but I think he has potential busts written all over him. I mean, we've been waiting for this guy to keep on saying, oh, he went to USC, he's this guy. But from here on out, for right now, he's going to be referred to, he'll continue to be referred to as the peasant. Because I remember when he first got here, he said, I'm going to be the best peasant. But he looks certainly like a peasant right now. Absolutely like a peasant. He's been virtually non-existent. And you can't afford to have that as your first round pick. I hope that Nelson Aguilar can do a lot better and get some separation and build off his last game, because he made some decent catches against the Bengals, but I don't think he's still fully there yet. He's just not. He still has a lot more work to do. Because I'm looking at this. With the Eagles offense, when they were playing very well, they were good on the offensive line, and Carson went to spreading the ball. And that's going to be the key with the Eagles' success on the offensive end. So now I want to transition over to where the Eagles rank offensively. They're averaging 22 points per game. They have a total of 337 yards in total offense. They have 228 yards passing, which ranks them 23rd. And then the Eagles' rushing attack, 109 yards per game, which ranks them 10th. So with that in mind, maybe that should be a sign to Doug Pearson. I know we've been talking about all the bad decisions Doug Pearson's making as a rookie head coach, and that he's not having enough of a balanced attack. So the fact that you are 10th overall in the NFL in rushing, maybe it's time to run the ball a little bit more. Because I'm a big proponent in the idea that you have to learn how to hide your weaknesses and show off your strengths. Your weakness is the pass game. Don't pass the ball so much. Gotta hide that. They have that on film. They have all the film they need on Carson Wentz right now. They're just waiting for Carson Wentz to throw the ball. So get Wendell Smallwood involved, because you're seeing when Wendell Smallwood gets the ball, he does make things happen. He's a pretty good runner. He's improving, I think, every single game. It's just we're not seeing it enough because it's only been a small sample size, given the fact that last game, 8 rushes, 19 yards. So run the ball. And now on the defensive end, as I mentioned earlier, they're not that bad. They're 10th in total yards, giving up 345 yards per game. They give up 245 yards passing. They give over 109 yards rushing, which ranks them 16th. And they have 18 takeaways, which ranks them 9th. However, I do think that this 10th ranked overall defense is a little bit misleading, given the fact that the Eagles are the number 1 team in the NFL with time of possession, which just quite frankly means that the defense is not on the field as much, so we can't really see all the foibles that this defense really has at times, because we've seen it. The secondary is clearly the clear weakness on this Eagles defense. So more than anything, this Eagles team, this defense, going against the Redskins, they just have to be disciplined, because the Eagles are currently ranked second in penalties. Penalties, they give up way too many penalties. Everybody remembers last game. It was penalty after penalty after penalty after penalty. I'm counting right here, 10 penalties and 88 yards. 88 yards. You can't win football games with that many penalties. A lot of the penalties were false start calls. They were late hits. They were roughing the passer. Just penalties left and right. Plethora of penalties. And you can't do that in the National Football League. The Raiders are ranked number 1, but it will surely will be after this game ranked number 1 in penalties, because they haven't fixed that area. They have not. Now I want to look over at the Redskins. The Redskins offense gets 25.2 points per game, which ranks them 10th. They have over 418 total yards. They have 309 passing yards per game and 109 yards rushing. Because as I mentioned before in the matchup, Kirk Cousins loves to get that ball going. He loves to fly, let it fly, throw his weapons. He has a litany of them. Jordan Reed's going to be back this game. That's clearly Kirk Cousins' favorite target, because Jordan Reed and Vernon Davis are a very good tandem together. So they have to just keep the Redskins from passing the ball so much, because like it or not, certainly we all don't like that when Kirk Cousins says that. But the Redskins are successful at passing the football, and Kirk Cousins, he looks good this year. He really does. I'm looking at Kirk Cousins' numbers this year because I've said this for a while about Kirk Cousins. I'm not the biggest believer in Kirk Cousins. I don't necessarily like Kirk Cousins. I think he's a little bit overrated. I think he's a glorified starting quarterback, even though he is having another good year. 21 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 99.6 quarterback rating, 3,811 yards. So he is having a good year. I will give him that. And he's obviously a franchise tag quarterback, so he's waiting for that big mega contract. So you got to keep Kirk Cousins in check. Now looking at this Redskins defense, they are ranked 23rd in total yards. They give up 369 total yards. Passing attack, they give up 255.3 yards per game, which ranks them 19th. And in the rushing, 114 yards, which ranks them 22nd, and then they have the 30 sacks. And against Ryan Kerrigan, who leads a team with 10 sacks, they have to double team Ryan Kerrigan. Kerrigan had his way last game against Vitae. They weren't getting enough double teams on him. He just had his way, and Carson Wentz got beat up. He got smothered, and you can't have that. You can't have that. I mean, he got barbecue chicken wrapped, and that just can't happen. It can't happen. Kerrigan was having a great time. That Redskins defense was having a good time. So they got to really contain that area. And I think the Eagles can have some success on both the passing and the running. Just don't throw the ball at Josh Norman. Don't throw the ball at Josh Norman. Don't get into a talking battle with Josh Norman. Because he clearly is the mouthpiece of that defense. He gets them going. Him and Brilliant are a pretty good tandem. But because a lot of teams are going away from Josh Norman, a lot of teams have had success in the air against the Redskins and in the running game. The running game, they're ranked 22nd, 114 yards. Gets Wendell Small with the ball. Give Wendell Small with the ball. That's all you have to really do. Give him the ball a lot more. Allow him to have success. I can't really think of many running backs who can have success if they're just getting the ball 8 times in a game or 9 times in a game. They can't really get into a rhythm that way. So when I'm looking at the rest of this Eagles game, I'm looking at the key players, the key things that have to happen in this game. They have to happen in this game. Is that on the offensive end, Wentz is going to have to be huge. He's going to have to go through his progressions. He's going to have to take his time and let the game come to him. I expect Wendell Smallwood to have a bigger game. I think Doug Peterson will get him involved a lot more in the play calling on the ground. My X-Factor play is going to be Dorial Green Beckham. I still have a lot of high hopes for this guy, even though he has not shown on the field, but he has all the physical attributes to be a very good receiver. And then the Eagles' offensive line. I can't express this enough. Ever since Lane Johnson got hurt, ever since he had his suspension for PEDs, his second offense, the Eagles have been 2-6. And Lane Johnson has apologized countless times about how bad he's let the team down, how upset he is. Yes, we get that. But the Eagles are 2-6 without him. So clearly that was a huge loss. They have to get him more. They have to get him back. He will be back. His suspension will be over by at December 19th after the Ravens game. But with that, at that point, there will only be 2 games left against the Giants and the Cowboys. By then, they'll probably be out of playoff contention. So it's not really going to help. Not going to really help them in that area. And I said before, a guy who's on his second offense for PEDs, you just can't trust that player. I don't care if he was the 4th overall pick. I don't care. It doesn't matter if he was the 4th overall pick. If you have a guy who just can't stay clean, who's a second offender, it just means that's going to happen again. Goes by the old adage, once a cheater, always a cheater. So I ask yourself, I think if it were me, I would cut Lane Johnson. I would cut him. Because I can't afford to be in a situation like this again. Well, let's say the Eagles are a playoff team. They play very well. They get to that 16th game, right? They're in the playoffs, and all of a sudden, knocking on the door. Here we go. Lane Johnson, 3rd violation, PEDs. There you go. You don't have your star right tackle in the playoffs. So I just don't want to have a guy on this team you just can't trust. There's no rapport there. You can't afford to have a guy who's a star player who continues to get in trouble with PEDs and breaking the rules. It just can't be done. You can't rely on that. So hopefully Lane Johnson gets it together. I think that maybe this Lane Johnson needs to start stacking up on some more cheesesteaks. Eat some more Philly cheesesteaks, get some more soft pretzels. You know, he needs to find other ways to put that weight on. Because I understand he's converted from a quarterback to an offensive lineman. I know that's a pretty tough transition to make. But that's not an excuse. That is not an excuse at all. So also, when I'm looking at the offensive, I think Ertz needs to continue to pick up what he has started from last game. Ertz does this every single year. He starts off slow and then he starts to pick it up when it absolutely does not mean anything. So I hope Ertz starts to play better. And then on the defensive end, I think that the defense has to get some more takeaways. They have to get a couple of interceptions from that secondary. The secondary, who leads the secondary in interceptions, is Ronnie McLeod. Malcolm Jenkins only has one interception. Nolan Carroll, McKelvin, all have one interception. So I expect those guys, they have to have a bigger impact. And then the defense and Fletcher Cox. Fletcher Cox has to be the anchor of this defense. He has to be the anchor of this defense. He needs to get after the quarterback. That front seven needs to control the game. They need to stop Rob Kelly. They need to contain Kirk Cousins. They need to get that pocket to collapse and make him uncomfortable. Because that's when Kirk Cousins starts to make errant throws. Because you look at the last couple of games, the front seven hasn't been great. Yeah, they did a good job against Jeremy Hill last game. Jeremy Hill had 23 carries, only 33 yards. So that front seven and Benny Logan did a good job. But I expect Benny Logan, Barwin, Graham, and Cox, they all have to get after Kirk Cousins this game. That's going to be another key thing. And also, I think when it comes to stopping fat Rob Kelly, Jordan Hicks, Bram, and Bradham, and also Michael Kendricks, they need to contain him. That's going to be the key. They need to be able to play in space, get in that line of scrimmage, and contain those gaps. Because once Rob Kelly gets going, you've seen, he's a very physical, tough guy to stop. So they got to contain that. So more than anything, I think that with the defense, don't get into a talking battle. I mean, all of it saying, don't get into a talking battle with Josh Norman. Because we all know that Josh Norman's going to continue to run his mouth and talk. And you saw that on Thanksgiving when Josh Norman and Des Bryant were going after it. You know, the whole fiasco between him and Odell Beckham Jr. So don't get involved with him. And ultimately, I think that when I look at the recap and I look at who's going to win this game, I'm going to say it. The Redskins are going to win this game 28-17. 28-17, because I don't think they're going to be able to protect Carson Wentz. I think Ryan Kerrigan is going to have his way. It wouldn't surprise me if he has 4 sacks against Vitae. They're not going to be able to protect Wentz. Wentz might just throw 70 passes and set an NFL record, because last game he threw 60, and they're not going to get the run game involved. Doug Peterson's going to be pass. We're going to think Aaron Reed is back there once again. And on the defensive end, I don't think they're going to really get after Kirk Cousins. I really don't. I think that they're going to be able to, Kirk Cousins is going to have his way. He's going to be throwing the ball all over the way with his arsenal of weapons. Deshaun Jackson's probably going to have over 150 yards. I think D. Jackson going to have a big game once again, because whenever he comes to Philadelphia, he loves kicking the bird. He loves taking it back at them. And I'm sorry about that. I'm still sorry about that to the day. I think that Jordan Reed is a very good matchup for Jordan Reed against the Eagles linebackers and Malcolm Jenkins, because Jordan Reed always has a good game against his Eagles team. And the secondary just is not up to par. So Kirk Cousins is just going to be licking his chops. And then, not only that, I think that fat Rob Kelly is going to have a big game. I think he's going to go over 100 yards. Because when you look at this Eagles team overall, they just struggle a lot of being physical. And they continue to lose the battle of the trenches. It starts with the battle of the trenches. In the first game, the Redskins won because they dominated the battle of the trenches. It was a close game, 27-20. But they still were dominated in that game. The only good thing I can see happen from the Eagles, and I think that Dorial Green Beckham, he is going to be my X factor. I think that he will score a touchdown. And Wendell Smallwood will probably get a touchdown. Other than that, 28-17. That's going to be the final score. That's going to be it. This Eagles team is just not a good team. They're just not a good team. They're in rebuild mode. Say it with me. Rebuild mode. And as much as people don't want to hear that, that's just the bottom line. They're in rebuild mode. Because I've said this to you guys countless times. I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear, but what you need to hear. And that's what you need to hear. So, 28-17, I had the Redskins winning this game. And at this point in time, I know people want to discuss, oh, playoffs. What about playoffs? Playoffs. Absolutely no way they're getting to the playoffs. No way. You got the remaining schedule. They have Baltimore, they're at Baltimore, then the Giants, then Dallas. And by then, Dallas is going to basically throw in Romo or maybe Mark Sanchez or whoever may else get into the game. Kellen Moore will probably get a couple of snaps. Dallas, Ray clinched it. So those games aren't going to mean anything. I just say at this point in time, this is just, the rest of these games are just a way to prepare for next year. Prepare for next year. Because the Eagles are 5-7. They're currently 8th in the wild card. So there's virtually no shot that they're really going to get into the postseason. Even though they're not mathematically out of it, I just don't see them getting in. Currently, the Giants are sitting at the top of the wild card, 8-4, followed by Tampa Bay at 7-5. So, guys, the reality is the Eagles just aren't going to go to the postseason. Any talk of playoffs is worthless. Because even if they do get into the postseason, they're going to lose in the first round. They're going to lose in the first round. And I know it has no significance now, given the fact that we traded all of our picks to get Carson Wentz. So our record this year is only going to help out the 0-12 Cleveland Browns. Yes, the 0-12 Cleveland Browns. So at this point in time, just forget about playoffs. Because we're not here to talk about playoffs. Playoffs? No, we're not here to talk about playoffs. And just enjoy the rest of the season. Enjoy the rest of the season. That's all I can say about that. I rest my case.